The Bible has got some very deep numbering sequences in there that are secrets. They actually lead to something. If you're a Jew or a Christian, you don't know what this is. How do you know if a Jew or Christian doesn't understand what's in the Bible? Because they are a Jew or a Christian. You know what? It's important for me to talk about both sides of that. There is something in here. So for the atheists that say it's all a bunch of crap, you're the same thing. You don't understand what's there. There is something here for very specific, a few people. All right. What I'm going to suggest is that if you're interpreting the material, turning it inward, interacting with it, talking to God in your mind, you've got it figured out. If you are worshiping, banging your head or shooting your empties on Sunday for your worship, looking out to God in space, you're idol worshiping. The Bible is written in such a way that all the bad guys are really the people carrying it. The Pharisees and all that, the scribes, the people that don't understand it, those are the people that are teaching the outward look to God in outer space. That's the idol worship portion. People say it's not idol worship. There is no idol. Let me tell you what idol worship is. Idol worship is worshiping a false god. In some cases, people put up an idol, which means it's made out of wood and covered in brass or gold sheet or something like that from days of old. It didn't even have to be that much. And that was a false idol. That's not a real God. So what do? We get rid of all of the idols and we make God into something that is invisible and so far away you can't see it anymore. So it went from a wooden idol to an invisible idol. It's idol worship. What I want to do is expose that. I'm taking a look at things and examining it. There's patterns in the Bible that become emergent once we look at them. But those patterns are very specifically there because you can see that it's man-made with a pathway, an inward pathway in a carrier case that is meant for the masses. We're going inside. If you don't know what I'm talking about, all I can say is this. We don't know the Bible well enough. This is very complex and it's meant to be memorized in the head. I can show you things with the computer that the computer can do, that if we had it memorized, we could do it in our minds. But without it being memorized, we cannot do what I'm going to show you. This is going to crack some things wide open. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. All right, this is incredibly deep. It's very big. So what I'm going to do is make some claims to begin with and just tell you that this is what I've discovered, but I'm going to show you, we're going to have to grow into it. It's not a simple thing to see. It's not an easy thing to see. There is something structured in here, which tells me very deliberately somebody created these stories in a pattern. It is a common pattern from antiquity. People mistakenly call it something, and it's really misidentified as a monomyth. It is not that. So I really actually want to dismiss myself from a term like that. There's a template, a human life template that is actually what the structure is on. Get rid of the term monomyth and say human life sequence. This is how we come about. This is how life transpires in the stages along the way from birth till death. This is what we go through, but if we change, we can take a path of inward healing. And that path of inward healing is universal, and that's what is in here, the path of inward healing. If you followed the Bible and after interpreting it in the best possible way, you would look more like a Buddhist than what we see today. And I'm going to suggest it's the verbal mechanism. Instead of calling it a fable, call it an arc. The story itself is what is containing the secrets. People that think it's all physical are all looking outward. These are all metaphorical things that have to be understood in a completely different way. All right. And I'm going to say you have to be very objective about it, but it's going to become a mental process. So you have to make sure to be able to approach this without having such an emotional attachment to it that you're afraid to examine it, or that you're so angry at it that you can't look at it objectively. You have to be at a certain mental place to be able to look at this material. I mean, look at it like you're studying a class, like you're reading Greek myth or something like that, not for the entertainment value, but there's something in there. There's some sort of a nested lesson. Imagine that we know it in Aesop's fable, the tortoise and the hare, and you have the theist and the atheist arguing back and forth why the race really happened, who kept their eyes on God. No, it couldn't have happened. Yes, it did. We found a tortoise shell. There's evidence that it happened. Back and forth, back and forth. Meanwhile, you're one person standing back going, you know what? There's a lesson in there, you guys. It's a verbal puzzle. You guys, it's not reality, but there's something there. That's what this is going to have to be like right here. We have to step back and look at it and not listen to the theist or the atheist tell us what's there. They don't know. They're talking about the carrier shell. We got to get below that. There's a layer they're not accessing. Now, I'm going to contend that that layer is very deliberately in the story. There's going to be a repeating pattern that happens that has to do with we'll just get into it. I'm going to say that that repeating pattern is there. And because it's a repeating pattern, you can number sequence it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. You can continually do that. And that's a very simple way. We're not going to see that. If you see patterns in the Bible, I'm going to tell you, you're seeing what I'm describing right there is a super simple version of a deeper of what they're actually doing. They're doing number repeats, name repeats in there that are very specific, but they're also designed to align with the pattern. This video is going to be to look for the purpose of the 9. That's an oddball thing. But here's what I want to say. First of all, the chapters and the verses in the Bible are numbered, and the numbers are actually following the numbers in the secret teaching, in the secret layer. People don't know it. There's 2 layers to the numbering. Here's how you look at it. Well, first of all, let me say this. Early, when the Bible first was out, there were not chapters and verses. It was just a story. In the beginning, there was all the way to the end. There wasn't chapters 1 through 50 and all the verses and things like that. That didn't come about until after it was beginning to be put in print and people were beginning to discuss it from a distance. You could no longer talk face to face. I mean, you could talk face to face, but now the option was to write letters to a correspondent across the country or something. What is your feelings on this? How do you interpret that, or something like that? And, by having chapters and verses, the person could easily go there. So those were added in, and we're told that that's the reason that they were added in, to help people study. But I'm going to contend that there's something deeper to it. Stephen Langton, the Archbishop of Canterbury, is the one that put those in. I've done videos on that before. You can research it if you want to. He is pointing to something. If we had these stories memorized, we could sequence these things through. Think of it in your own life with a hobby you have that you're so good at. You know all the pieces, the parts, the sizes, and everything. Imagine that your entire life is simple and it's really hooked into these stories. You would know them that well. We would know that Sarai's name is repeated 17 times, that Noah's name is repeated 40 times, that Isaac's name is repeated 80 times. There's certain numbers in there, and those numbers you will see coming in the 900s and the all of the number patterns in Genesis are there, very purposeful. I've analyzed those and I'm still not completely, I don't have them dialed in. That's what I'm doing the 9 for right now. Okay, what I'm saying here is that Langton, when he put the chapters and verses in, he tried to point us back to that pattern. And if we go look and we start to analyze, we start finding out some certain things that's there. And I mean, it's a weird thing. It's thick. You have to be into it. And just observe this on your own. If you read the Bible, one thing you should notice is that the chapters and verses are not bound by sentences. Sometimes they start mid-sentence. Sometimes there's several of them. Sometimes they're clean, one sentence after another, one verse after another. And then sometimes they're not. But the way he's breaking them up in that way, what it does is it pushes concepts into a particular numbered verse. Also, if you read this story, when you go from chapter to chapter, there are logical breaks. It's kind of like going from island to island, but there's a couple of places where that's not right. So that if you read through it, there's some flow problems in Genesis where the chapters don't overlap or the chapters don't align correctly. And that's been noted. You go look online and people will say that he put chapters and verses in, but sometimes in Genesis, they're not quite lined up. You know what? There's a reason for it. But this is also important to note. The alignment issue is the creation stories. There's 2 creation stories, and he's got a weird overlap. The next one, and that is the human life, starts right there. That's the human life cycle. It goes all the way up to where the destruction needs to happen. Chapter 6. 7, 3-7, pure state. 7 is where it's time to go in and heal. See, that's where the macro and the micro numbering is going to be coming into play right there. Okay, however, the calling of Noah starts in chapter 6, and there's actually 2 different callings. One of them where he's told to bring 2 pairs of everything, and another one where he's told to bring 7 clean pairs of everything. And there's two variations right there. Twice he's told what to bring on the boat. That is the start of the inward healing path. So when you interpret them, what you realize is that both of those chapter issues are occurring right at the beginning of each template. The human life template, the self-healing template. Those overlaps are right there at the start. I think the easiest way to illustrate that is right here in the beginning where the 3-7 grid starts. He pointed us to this. I looked at this for a long time. I kept looking at it thinking, why is this so wrong? There's 2 creation stories. This one is the 7-day creation story all the way up, and then God finished and rested. Then it starts a second creation story, but not until verse 4 of chapter 2. So there was 3 verses up here that belonged with the 7-day creation. They should have been in chapter 1. They got overlapped into chapter 2. It's a weird chapter break. It's not in the right place. So I thought that was weird, but eventually what emerges is that we're developing a pattern of numbers that start on 3 with 3 and 7. And we have 7th day repeated 3 times here, with verse 3 being where it shows up right down here. And that parallels with this down here, the second creation, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So this is a starting point in life for us on the human life cycle. This is us in the beginning, brand new child, ready to go, not judged life yet. It's also going to equal 3 and 7. That's weird, but that's what they're doing to start hiding a repeating pattern. They're going to start developing numbers. And him doing this up here, actually, that's what points us to it. You look at that and go, why is that? You look at it. 3, 7, 3, 7. 3s and 7s are part of that list that show up continuously. He made sure that third 7 was on a verse 3. He tied it together. So I've gone from thinking, I don't know what Langton is doing, to, you know what? He's Chester Copperpot, trying to lead us to the treasure. Let's go see what he's got going on. Let's go find a 9. All right, so what I'm going to contend then, if that's the case, that as we get into chapters and verses, that the 9 is going to have some sort of a repetitive meaning to it. And that means 9, 19, 29, 39, 49, 59, but anything that ends in 9. 9 itself and what ends in 9. I've got it on the pattern right here as a green thing. Here's where it was collected in the analog farm in Genesis. All right, and we're going to instantly get into the layer where I say nobody gets to because we just don't know it well enough. We'll see it right here as it begins to emerge. This is what I call the grid. It's kind of a numbering grid, but right here, you see where the 9 is? What we have is all the days is repeated 12 times in Genesis. Of Methuselah, 7 times. These are from the list. These are gathered numbers. We've got our 7 there. 900 doesn't sound right, does it? But if we look, we'll see that 900 is repeated exactly 7 times. If we treat it like it's a surrogate, then we've got our 60 and our 6. I am not certain of this one. I am not. I'm certain of this, this, this. And 9 is repeated by itself, is repeated exactly 3 times, which is part of the 3-7 grid. That's why I grab a 9 and say, okay, I'm going to put it on that list. And he died 33. 33 is a good thing. We got a 30 and we got a 3. Why would that be? This is spiritual death. Your old self, dying to your old self, not to life. But what they're doing here is they're gathering numbers. This is an analog pool. They're using these to gather up other numbers, and that's why I gathered the 9. But the 9 doesn't seem to exactly fit. It follows a sequence. And one question I had recently from somebody was about 39. And I realized, you know what, that's one step before 40, which is purity, which is on this template right here. So maybe it has to do something on the template with just before the purity stage, like a turning inward or something like that. There's a few things that happen in a human life before we turn inward. And we're going to find that somehow, if we go and analyze where the 9s are, I don't think it's going to be 100%, but I think fairly close. We could start analyzing. All right, let's get into it then. I'll keep a separate list. I'm going to go through Genesis because this is where it starts. I honestly believe that numbering pattern evolves as we begin. It doesn't start right off that way. Creation has to happen. Pardon my voice. I'm a little fried here. Okay, let's go ahead and try to read them. I'll read them though and see what we come up with. Chapter 1, verse 9. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. So we actually have, it almost sounds like a division, doesn't it? We've got Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. Well, the dry land is appearing from the waters this represents the emergence of our life from a pool of background something. We are the dry land is going to be our life experience. I don't know what that would mean. We'll just move on. Let's go to 19. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. No, I don't think we're into the numbering pattern yet. Before digging a lot deeper into it, I want to cover something again. This is super important. I want to show you how this works. You see right here where the 7 is. The 3 and the 7 is where the grid is. But from there, it stops. It moves up next. What happens after that 7? Naked, unashamed in the garden. What's the very next step happens? First sin. Right here, 8. So it went from a good thing to a bad thing right there. Now, if we were to go in Genesis and take a look at actually, before I go on, the same thing happens with 10 to 11, 12 to 13, 20 to 21. As the cycles continue to repeat, it's going to advance, and like every time you run into an 8, it's going to be a first sin sort of a thing. We're looking for the 9. The 10 is the healing. 8 is first sin. You look through Genesis, you're going to find Sodom is said 21 times, Adah 8 times, creature and Gerar, I don't remember which. You keep going through, this is just a small, the entire Bible is this way. Okay, you look and find wine, what Noah drank is a good thing. That was a good feeling. Nakedness was a good thing. He was uncovered. He was healed. He was uncovered, yeah. So this is how it gets deep and it gets thick, but we don't know it. However, watch. I'm going to make a comparison between here and the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish. They were sharing this code. The Babylonians and the Jews are sharing this code. All right, again, it's very important to maintain an objectivity. We're looking for something in here that is definitely there, put in by somebody in the background. Okay, if you go through the 7 tablets of creation, there's a destruction that has to happen. There's a point where there is evil happening, and the evil happening is coming from a source called, in this material, it's called Lady Huber. It's not Satan or the devil or the serpent. It's Lady Huber who conjures up all of the destructive force. So if we put Lady Huber and we search, oops, you know what? I spelled it wrong. There we go, 8 times. This is Babylonian. 8. From 7 to 8. Okay, let's pick some other ones. Is that a fluke? Let's just take a look at a couple of other things here from the Babylonian source itself. Okay, what about poison? Poison is 8 times. Poison is a bad thing. What about devil? Devil is repeated exactly 8 times. All of these are on that template. You know who the called hero is here in the Babylonian creation epic is Marduk. You know that name? Marduk is the called hero. Marduk's name is repeated 41 times. Let's go to Genesis for a second. Do you know who the called hero is when the destruction needs to happen? We know who it is. Who made the boat? Noah. Okay, if we go over here to Genesis, 41 times. So the called hero Marduk, the called hero Noah, both names repeated exactly 41 times. The 8s. We can keep going on. I don't need to. What I just want you to understand is that this is a shared numbering pattern. You know, you don't have to look at this and go, I don't know what that guy's talking about. You can look and go, I don't understand it, but something's there, all right. There is. If you keep figuring it out, we'll get there. It's hard. 29. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which the fruit of a tree yielding his seed. To you it shall be for your meat. Okay, and God said, behold, I have given you. This is not you have named yet. This is you coming already with something. Giving you every herb bearing seed. So you come with your own qualities, characteristics, likes, dislikes, personality, everything else, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree. You're going to live your life in concert with your personality, the kind of person you are, in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. Yeah, we're all going to live our own way, but there's certain qualities we arrive with that we don't have any control over. We're going to start naming things later, but at this point, we're not. I don't see anything there. Here's our overlap. 9, and out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So this sounds a lot like what we just read in 19 above, doesn't it? Or 29, was it? 29. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, of every tree which is in the fruit of a tree yielding seed. So to you it shall be for meat. You're going to have every opportunity to consume life in the way you see fit. We're going to make choices and live. They're probably not good choices to begin with. Out of the ground the Lord made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree, this is the things that we see in life, the manifestations of what we want. And good for food. We're going to spiritually consume, learn. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life we're not going to partake of. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents that we are going to begin consuming life, and we're going to learn the difference between good and bad. We're going to start judging things. We're going to begin judging life as good or bad, and we're going to become products of that. Okay, yeah, so that's a division, isn't it? It's really important to put some very tight definitions on these terms. The trees of the knowledge of good and evil and the one of life. What do those two mean? The tree is something that emerges from us. It grows from our garden. One of them is life. One of them is the knowledge of good and evil. In the spiritual realm, learn, wrap yourself up into it. We're first born unaware, then we die. What that means is we go start living life unaware that we're just connecting to the things that we see. We're becoming products of the environment. We're judging things that we see and becoming products of that. Judge not lest you be judged, for the judgment with which you judge others will be judged unto you. We're becoming products of what we judge in life. So what we're doing is we're consuming of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We are not consuming of the tree of life. If we were consuming of the tree of life, that would mean that we don't spiritually die to begin with, that we never connect that way, that we sit back and go, I've been taught not to judge that stuff. Okay, that's why we don't partake of that one, because we go ahead and live life making judgment calls about that. That's what those mean right there, is we're consuming the tree in the spiritual realm. We're going to die, but we're going to die spiritually, which means we're going to start living through our physical memories in the past and not the now and the joy that we want in life. We have to be reborn, which means we come through the memories and let that in the past. So the trees represent that in the beginning. Which direction did we go? We went the bad way. Cain and Abel, same thing. We could become either one. What do? We go the bad direction. These are alternate routes in this path, but we take which one? We're going to the path of destruction that needs to be healed. Well, it doesn't say that yet. That's just me inferring later on. Okay, no, keep moving on. And out of the ground the Lord formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air. So we've got something still emerging. We had the trees up above, now we have beasts. Adam to see what he would call them. This is now me calling our life experiences. Now I am learning. This is not what I arrived with. This is what I am determining based on who and what I am and where I come from. So I'm becoming myself. Is that a division? It's a separation perhaps from the purity of living through the higher awareness, except that we don't know that. We don't have the mental cognition as infants to know we're living from a higher self. We have no idea. And you know what? Think this through. Truth be told, first sin hasn't happened yet. So this naming that we're doing right here is the consciousness is not naming life experiences. It's naming the early life things. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I love you. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I want to play. It's learning all of those things that help us get started to begin with. This is that part of our life, naming it. We don't start judging life until the inner self is there as a product. The conscious, the subconscious are both together now. We're not developed there yet in this creation template. If that's a human life template, we're not there yet. Not until we have an inner self that we're aware of and go off and have a bad experience, first sin, do things go bad. So the naming here is not that yet. This is prior to that. That can only be what? I have now gone from I don't know anything because I'm just an infant that has no memory to now I know how to ask for things and to play and to laugh and get mad and things like that. So you've learned those basic. That's it right here. Basic learning. We have to have life experiences and learn first. Anyway, okay. 9, and the Lord called unto Adam and said, where are you? So he's asking him where he is. Is he hiding in the garden? This represents the idea that we are now losing contact with our higher awareness. We are no longer sitting pure. We're now feeling bad and not feeling good. And the higher awareness wants to know, hey, where are you? That's that voice at night that says, hey, you got to go to sleep. There's nothing you can do. Back here, it's asking, where are you? It really doesn't. Do you remember that as a kid? No. This is just letting us know that we're separating from that. Separating. Where art thou? Yeah, separation is starting to, I don't know. In the sweat of the face you shall eat bread. You shall return to the ground, for out of it you was taken. And you're born of the ground, you're going to return to it. And this is the punishment aspect. That's why. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return into the ground. Eating bread. This is all spiritual. So it's gonna be hard for you to live life till you die. For out of it you came, and you shall return to it. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't sound like anything to me. And I don't mean it doesn't sound like anything. It sounds actually very, very important to understand and to know. It doesn't sound like anything that's establishing in a pattern of 9s yet. And I also understand this is very old stuff, and my brain it's probably right there, and I can't read it. I can't see it. I don't understand it. I think we're so far removed from this, it's hard to get back into it. And the Lord said, Cain, where is your brother Abel? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? Okay, bingo. Ding, 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 ding. Always put yourself into these. The Lord is the higher awareness, and the principal parts are us. Cain and Abel are both males, so they're both parts of our inner self. They're the two parts of us that can go on, Cain or Abel. Which do we become? Do we become Cain or do we become Abel? And this is so 9 right here, we have a division happening. 19, and Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of one was Adah, and the name of the other Zillah. Always put yourself into the story. Lamech is your consciousness. Adah and Zillah are your 2 possible inner beings. They're just splitting these up. Think about it and think of it as simply a division. That's what this is, a division. Adah, her name is repeated 8 times, which is on our list of, that's the first sin. Zillah, 12 times, or 3 times. That's pure. So we've got a division, good and bad, in the same way that we had a Cain and Abel division on 9. We've got that happening on 19. So on 9, where's your brother? I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? Division, inner division. And Lamech took to him 2 wives, Adah and other Zillah, inner division. Down here, 9. Okay, this gets into the analog farm, so I don't think it's going to follow in suit. It's doing something different. It's gathering numbers. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just and perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. This is the calling of Noah, so it's getting ready to turn inward, getting ready for the flood. You see, 9 is there. What's weird, though, it's another one of those odd overlap ones. This is in Noah's being called during the destruction. The earth is being destroyed, and then right here, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Really should have started the next chapter. But yeah, there's more things going on. There was stuff added in here. There's 2 callings of Noah. He's told 2 different times what to bring, 7 pairs or 2 pairs. That squares with the first or the second creation story. So there's some oddball overlapping going on here. But this is also important to note. The alignment issue is the creation stories. There's 2 creation stories, and he's got a weird overlap. The next one, and that is the human life starts right there. That's the human life cycle. It goes all the way up to where the destruction needs to happen. Chapter 6. 7, 3-7, pure state. 7 is where it's time to go in and heal. See, that's where the macro and the micro numbering is going to be coming into play right there. Okay, however, the calling of Noah starts in chapter 6. And there's actually 2 different callings. One of them where he's told to bring 2 pairs of everything, and another one where he's told to bring 7 clean pairs of everything. And there's two variations right there. Twice he's told what to bring on the boat. That is the start of the inward healing path. So when you interpret them, what you realize is that both of those chapter issues are occurring right at the beginning of each template. The human life template, the self-healing template. Those overlaps are right there at the start. There went in 2 and 2 into the ark, the male and female, as God had commanded Noah. Right up there. That 9 doesn't sound right. Down here we had every clean beast. I shall take these 7, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. So there's beasts of 2 and by 7's the male and his female, 7 pairs of. Yeah, the 7... 7s and 7s. It's weird. It's code. It's really old code. We got our 7s and our 40s. Our 40s are being developed here. I don't see where division is happening in 19. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. So this represents, the earth is our earth. We're trying to flood out our past. So this would represent that we've somehow gotten everything under control. Maybe it's not cured yet. We have to let the flood sit for a while. This is like sitting in the desert for 40 years or in the wilderness for 40 days. Here we're going to, the flood is there for a total of 120 days in this case. 150 days, I'm sorry. 50, of course, is one of our numbers collected as well. And the 100 and 100. So that's going to be pure state as well. Waiting 40, waiting 50, all of those are from the, in fact, let's go a little advanced here. You see how the numbers, from the pool, look what happens here. We're going to have analogs that are they sound kind of different, but kind of the same. These all mean the exact same thing. Being under a flood for 150 days. That's flooding my world for a duration till pure. 40 years in the desert, 40 pure state. In the desert, place devoid of. You know what? I use that term pure state. And what it really doesn't mean you do this until I am completely, I am enlightened now. That's the end goal. But on this path right here, it has to be taken repeatedly. We typically don't have one issue that we have to resolve, and then once you do that, everything is okay. We typically have to go over and over again. So each one of these, if there's something that has to be resolved, it's going to take work. It's really wired in the brain, and it's going to take this duration. They're letting us know to work at it, and that you'll emerge naked and feeling good on the other side. But your sons are going to, other parts of you are going to cover you back up, because now, I took care of that thing and I feel good. But after a while, I think, boy, there's something else that's bothering me. It was not big because it was held down underneath this other big thing. But now that I've gotten rid of that one and I've made the adjustments, the next big thing's got to go. If I'm looking for purity, I have to go again and again. So when I say purity, I mean from an individual trip, not the entire life. Although, again, that is the end goal. Stay there till pure. 40 days in the wilderness. This is right after crossing thresholds. What do we have? We have 40s and 40s there. Then we get 3 days in a whale. That 3 from the 3-7 grid. We're inside of something. The threshold is the mouth. The inside cavity is there. The 3 days in the tomb. The opening of the tomb is the threshold. And in the tomb, all of these, we would emerge pure. If you look at the story, you're going to see there's a crossing of a threshold to get into it, a duration there, and then a purity on the way out. Bam. And the crossing of the thresholds for the 40 years in the desert and the 40 days in the wilderness was a water crossing through the Red Sea, or the baptism, or whale's mouth, or the opening of a tomb. Okay, so now I think what I need to do is try to wrap this up in some way. I'm looking through the material, and In fact, let's take a look at what we have so far. I did keep a list of it. Here we go. From chapter 1, verse 9 was, "And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so." And I wrote that we mentally emerge from the cosmic background. That's what that means. 19, "And evening and morning, the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Divides day into night, awareness into unawareness." So that does sound like a division. I looked at that later and thought, you know what? It is on day 4, it divides those two. 29, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is on the face of all the earth. This is, you arrive with preset parameters, brain type, and personal preferences." So we're not into, we're still teaching, we're still coaching how we come about. I don't know we're quite into the pattern yet. "And out of the ground, the Lord God made grow every plant that's pleasant to the sight." So from the second creation story, we've got the same teaching here, except within you is the pathway to begin life. This sounds kind of like a mental shift. If you know that the garden is you and the trees are growing there, then you know that this is whatever you become is the tree in your garden. Is it a good tree or a bad tree? And it'll be a product of its roots. That's our judged experiences are the roots of the metaphorical trees or plants, thistles, flowers, all of it that emerge from our garden. It's all just colorful metaphor. Out of the ground, okay. So this part right here, this is developing our basic self-awareness through basic knowledge until we are metaphorically Adam and Eve, or conscious and subconscious. We're not self-aware yet. When we're infants, we're not self-aware. I mean, I know that. I'm sure I felt pain, but I have no memory of being circumcised. Okay, there's certain things we just don't know because we don't have the mental life out of the womb, out into the world experience to process anything, nothing, for a while. It takes a few years. Then we do start playing like little kids, but even then, I mean, you can watch a 3 or 4-year-old play and have fun and then ask them 20 years later and they won't even remember doing that. It doesn't for me either. So there's a point there where we're really, this is a point where we are developing into that. We have not yet had life experience as the first sin yet. Chapter 3, the Lord God said, "Adam, where are you?" The higher awareness is fading away from us. 19, "In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground." This is punishment, means we will live life unaware that we are judging our experiences with emotion and will live through them, suffering in life. Then we get down here into chapter 4, and there's 2 of them, bam, bam, that are inner divisions. 9, "And the Lord said to Cain, where's your able brother? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" It signifies an inner division. 19, "The Lamech and the Zillah, Adah, wives, the split, the one coming up in the red zone, one coming up in the green zone, characteristic. You're going to be unaware or unaware. These are the 2. Inner division. Chapter 5, where we had, other things going on there that are not really that. Okay, so what I want to do is stop for a minute and talk about, you see the pattern, and if you're on board with the idea that 40 is like that, there's that period of time you're in the desert or in the wilderness, or 3 in there, or 7 in there, or however you want to do it, any of those numbers are going to accomplish the same thing. 150 days under the flood. All of those are time till it takes for this to heal. What is 39? What then is the first step before that? It's going to be crossing a threshold, or it's going to be, you know what, actually, let me look around a little bit more. I came down to chapter 19 in Genesis just to read it. This is where the Sodom story is going to be happening. This is it right here. There came 2 angels to Sodom. What do we have? We just had the analog farm here. You see where the 50 is? 50 righteous, 50 righteous, 50 righteous, 50 righteous. Righteous is said 7 times right here, which makes this an analog farm. One thing that's fun to note about that analog farm, I call it an analog farm, it does absolutely nothing. It simply reads as a conversation between Abraham and God. Would you kill it for this many? And obviously it was going to, or destroy it for this many. It went ahead and got destroyed anyway. So that entire conversation was for naught. It didn't make any difference. Unless you know that it's collecting analogous numbers, then it makes a damn big difference. The 50 is said 4 times. 5 is said 3 times, 40 is said 3 times, 30 is said twice, 20 twice, 10 twice. These are all gathered up as analogs because of that process right there. That's exactly what they're doing. Then we get down here into 19, and what do we have? If we get down to verse 7, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. So he's asking the men of the city to not come after. Please don't know those men. And what does he do in step 8? Behold, now I have 2 daughters which have not known man. What happened with Eve in step 8? Corruption. He's offering up his daughters for corruption. On step 8, I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do to them as is good in your eyes. So do whatever the hell you want to them. Just don't do anything to these men, for they came under the shadow of my roof. The inner being is what is going to be corrupted. If we get into 9, stand back. They said, stand back. This one fellow came in to hang out for a while, and he will need to be a judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. So he's like, all right, that if you don't give us those men, then we're going to get you. But the men put forth their hand, pulled Lot into the house, and shut the door. Anyway, I don't see this. What do we get to 19? Behold, now the servant found grace in the sight, and you have magnified your mercy, which thou hast showed to me in saving my life. I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me and I die. Behold, now this city is near to flee to, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape hither. It is not a little one, and my soul is it not a little one, and my soul shall live. Oh, we want to find a smaller. We want to destroy our Sodom and have it move to a new place. And this is metaphorically. This is a life experience. We get down here in 29, and it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abram and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow. Then he overthrew the cities which Lot. Okay, so you know what? It sounds to me like as time goes on, it's morphing from a division to a cyclical pain, and both of them are parts of there. But the reason we go on the journey is because of cyclical pain. The division happens not during the inward path. The division happens during early on in life. So that 39 just before 40 probably more closely represents the cyclical pain, especially since it's the whipping. 39 lashes, and then 40. Cyclical pain, and then healing. Yeah, and of course, from an analog standpoint, that's how we're working it through. Yet in their culture, they're whipping people 39 times, making sure they only do it, a certain amount of time so as not to make the slaves look bad. Yeah, that's the kind of people that's the kind of life they live. All right, this time I just jumped to chapter 39. It's a very short one. It's 23 verses only. So let's see what 39 sounds like in Genesis. This should have an overall sound to it. It's got Joseph going on here, and we'll get into it here. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, and an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him there. Whew, my throat is kind of fried, I'm sorry. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and served him, and made him overseer of his house, and all that he had put in his hand. It sounds like a calling. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him an overseer of his house. That means you are in charge of your life and your experience. And over all that he had, you're in charge of your world experience now. And the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. The Egyptian's house is inside of us too. That's the part of us that we don't want to win. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. All right, the save the bread which he did eat. He knew not what he had. He had a very minimal, he just had his own thing. That should start sounding like a common motif. In the book of Daniel, they only want to eat their stuff. Here, it's a minimal amount. his life is not an extravagant. He's a very minimalist, simple. Life is pure. Kind of, I'm just eating my bread, not the bread of the world. I'm consuming from my own inner desires, not from the outward experience like that. We would see shades of this in the Israelites in the desert who are eating very minimal amounts of manna. And it's very specifically called for. And in Jesus, when he is in the desert, where he is fasting completely. So there's this idea that whatever the consumption is going to be a very minimal and a very highly controlled input. Think of that as mental, spiritual, mental, minimal input, minimal consumption. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. That's number 7. Hasn't happened yet. There's still something happening. But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, my master wants not what is with me in the house. And he had committed all that I had to my hand. I'm in charge. There's none greater in this house than I, neither has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. Now I can go do this great, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he hearkened not unto her to lie with her or be with her. Okay, so what's happening so far is that this is representing the idea of temptation. We are having an internal temptation from other things happening, and we are fighting it off. No, I'm not going to do that. And 10, and it came to pass as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he hearkened not unto her to lie with her or to be with her. 10, pure state. He's nope, not there. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men in the house were there. And she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of the house and spoke to them, saying, see, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock him. He came in unto me to lie with me. And I cried with a loud voice. You know what? Apocryphal Gospel, Susanna. What the hell? All right, I brought up Susanna. There dwelt a man in Babylon called Joachim. This is a very short one. This is an apocryphal work it was in the Bible for a while. It was never part of the canon, but it's since been removed, but it's still available. There dwelt a man in Babylon called Joachim, and he took a wife whose name was Susanna. She was fair. Her parents were righteous, and so was their daughter. So we're all pure, inner being pure. Now he was a rich man and had a fair garden joining to his house. That's us. We're the rich man. Susanna is the inner self. So this is from a different perspective. Joseph from the male perspective. Susanna from the female, the inner being perspective. He was a great rich man. The same year were appointed over the Babylonian. There was people supposed to be judges. Wickedness came from Babylon, from ancient judges who seemed to govern the people. Here we go. Now when the people departed away at noon, Susanna went into her husband's garden to walk. This is the inner self moseying inside of our memories. The people departing at noon and you being there alone is the same thing as when Jesus talks about the bride and the bridegroom in the bride chamber, that can't take place until the children of the bride chamber have gone. So what that means is that as long as there's stuff, judgments, the mind is full of things, you're not free to walk in the garden. But with all of that stuff gone, you're free to walk in the garden. You have an empty mind. Empty as far as holding judgments that cause the cyclical pain. Not empty in other ways. And the two elders saw her going in every day and walking, so that their lust was inflamed toward her. So there we have, who was it? The mistress trying to get Joseph to lie with her. What was that? And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Number 7. Here in Susanna, it's a different one, but it's still there. Okay. So when they were gone, they departed out from one another, turning their back again. So their 2 elders come in and hide themselves. And let's see, where do we have it? 18. And they did as she bade them, and shut the garden doors, and went out themselves at privy doors to fetch the things that she had commanded them. But they did not see the elders, because they were hidden. So the elders tried to have sex with her. And she says no. And they say, if you don't, we're going to bear witness against you that a young man was with you. And therefore, okay, I'm going to stop right there. What I want to do is just say, do you see shades of the same story? You really should. These are copying, and they're coming from different perspectives. You got Jacob, it's from the conscious perspective. What if I was talking from the inner self? How would that sound? Then it takes on a female tone. So, all right. I just wanted to point that out. There's commonalities all throughout here that is so much that it's astounding, but it's a puzzle way to read it that we've lost. An example of this, what we have right here is the idea that there's internal corruption, and it can be the male being tempted by the female. Oh, that's life tempting us. Or in the other case, the inner being outside coming in and tempting you. We want to corrupt you. And they're both holding ideas that the inner self can be corrupted or not. If we went to Genesis and Exodus, here's an example of how the same analog can be used to make it sound different. In Genesis 12, when Abram and Sarai are called, God puts them in a land of famine, then disappears, and they go to Egypt, and Pharaoh marries Sarai, and he's so happy with her that he gives Abram slaves and animals. But because of that, cyclical pain emerges. What this story is representing early on in life, we're starting out, we're in a devoid place, but we go off and experience life. As a result, our inner self becomes corrupted, and we take on qualities that we must leave. In this case, Pharaoh gets plagues. The cyclical pain is happening. And that tells us it's time to move on. I've got plagues happening. There's cyclical pain here. So what happens is Pharaoh tells them, you lied to me. Get out. Pharaoh was a good guy. We go right to the next book, Exodus, and what do we have? A remake of the same story. Moses is isolated in a basket. He goes there. He's going to be raised as an Egyptian, or with the Egyptians, rather. But what happens in that version is that Pharaoh ends up being with the bad guy who says, you can go, no, you can't. Yes, you can go, no, you can't. So we have the past and the struggle to leave the past. The story gets much bigger, and it went from Pharaoh being the good guy, representing the past, telling you to leave, or Pharaoh telling you can go and that you can't go, in that case, representing the past, that it's a struggle to leave behind. It's a struggle to leave that. You can see it. Yes, go, go, no. Okay, so that's how the analogs can shift around and look different. And the stories don't sound the same. When if you understand it's a play on words, and they're telling it from different perspectives. If the past is a monster, or the past is a good thing, it can tell you to go or not let you go. In both cases, it represents the struggle to leave our past. That's it. All right, this might be one of my most convoluted videos. They can get that way sometimes. I got under the weather. I've been taking breaks from it. It's been several days I've been working on this, and it's not a good flow. I never script anything. I just sit down and start going through it. But then you see what happens as I'm going through here. I'll get sidetracked because it's like, oh, wow, this matches up with something else. I remember it at the time, and that's when you stop and go look. That's you're forging those connections more and more as you read that stuff, and you're seeing they're the same stories, but different perspectives, different things going on. And in this case, really the video was about the 39, and I'm pretty convinced that 39 means cyclical pain, not division. It looked like early on they were going to be using division, maybe stacking more stuff up, but eventually it was like, okay, if you're going on the journey, the internal path, one of the elements to start with before crossing the threshold is that there is cyclical pain. Okay, Phineas's food getting defiled on a daily basis just before they go through the clashing rocks, the plagues coming repeatedly to the Israelites or Egypt actually, as the Israelites wanted to leave, and the plagues kept coming and coming. Okay, and here's another fun thing: the Genesis story in the beginning with Abram and Sarai. What happened there? It's the same story, exact same story, except it's very small and it was simple. Exodus, the same story on steroids. What do they do instead of saying plagues happened? So Pharaoh told them to go. In this case, 10 plagues. Pharaoh tells them that you go, you can't go, you can go, you can't go. They're taking that short little chapter and turning it into a whole big story. You can see the morphing and they're the same stories being told in different analogous ways. You know what? Ezekiel's going to be there too. It'll get thick. I'm talking about the easy stuff so far. Okay, so 39, I'm going to just say, I'm pretty sure because of the 39 lashes and then right before 40, that's cyclical pain, that's what it morphed to. Even in the beginning, if it was something different, I believe that's what the 39 is meant to represent. If it's 9's other place, I'm not sure. But on my list of numbers here, what I'm going to do is start another list. I've got 2, a green and a red. I need to have a couple of other colors there, some transitional stuff. There's a cycle. There's not just 2 steps. There's a number of steps. And I've only really identified 2. And that, you know what? I said that wrong. I've only identified 2 number sequences. I've identified the steps, that we live through cause and effect, that we start out pure, that we begin to judge life, that we become products of that we live first unaware, and that we become products of the life judgments that we make. Time goes by. We finally get to a point where it's like the world is raucous. The Nephilim are acting out. My inner being has been corrupted by forces outside of me. It's just life. And now it's time for the flood. It's time to turn inward. It's time to go defeat. There's many steps in there. However, I've only identified 2 number steps when actually the numbers should follow the entire pattern, the human life pattern. The human life steps are established. How the numbers fit with those are only partially established. But I think that some of those that I've identified as in the green area belong in transitional areas. It's just old and it's hard to figure it out. And the chapter 39 with Joseph didn't sound like a cyclical pain. The one in Genesis, the really early one, what it sounded like was temptation and the capacity to ward off temptation. So I think that it morphed. There is actually a very evident morphing that goes right off the bat. In Genesis, very early on in the earliest story, it was appropriate to say Noah was naked and drunk. That's very early stuff. That represents the idea spiritually that he was uncovered from what he first had as shame, pain, fear, something. Whoever it is healed. Drunk means I feel good. I've created a vineyard. I've created a new life. And I feel good from that new life, and I'm uncovered from that. It actually brings our Adam and Eve story full circle. It starts out naked, unashamed in the garden. That was a pure state. We get towards after the flood, naked, unashamed. Obviously he's not ashamed. His kids were ashamed of him, but he was uncovered. It brought that first cycle from starting out being uncovered, starting out being naked to finishing off being naked. However, it didn't stay appropriate necessarily to continue that on in the public. You don't probably want all of your prophets getting naked every time they heal something. As time went on, that ceased to be an appropriate analogous way. And so you don't see throughout the Bible people getting drunk and naked. That stopped right there. What you see is people maybe taking off dirty robes, or having pure linen robes or satin or something like that, pure white robes. There was different ways of illustrating the idea that someone was pure spiritually other than naked. Okay, hope the video was fun and interesting. If you're searching for this stuff, you see I'll go all over the place with it, and it's hard to stay focused because it is so huge. And as you're picking up on things, sometimes you just have to stop and go, I got to make this connection right here. That happened once when I was doing the Gospel of Thomas, and I was like, Pharisee is like a dog in the manger. I just read the dog in the manger from Aesop's fables, You stop everything and go look, and you start finding those matching shared verses, shared things going on, yeah. And the more you read, the more you run into that, honestly. The people that don't know the Bible don't read the Bible. And there's many people that do read it that still don't understand it. They're all over that layer too. Okay, so if you're believing in the Bible, this is how the material works. It's mentally, I don't want to say inside out, but it plays a mental game on the person that carries it, who thinks that if the blind lead the blind, they will all fall into the pit. Everybody interpreting the material looking outward is the blind leading the blind. The Pharisees don't understand what's going on. They're not teaching things properly. Everybody who is a Christian or a Jew would fit the category of Pharisee. Many are called, few are chosen. All of those are the many called. They're not the few chosen. You must enter the narrow gate. You must turn inward with it. The material is written in such a way that the people who most strongly hold on to it do not understand what they're carrying. They carry the ark without looking inside. All of this is metaphoric for this turning inward path. And when you interpret the material, you see that's where God is. Only people that's who's worthy, according to the template. What does that mean? I don't know. But there's a pathway that is not worshiping a God who puts his people somewhere where they have to start sledding themselves out for slaves and animals and food. Yeah, no, there's something else going on. All right. And atheists, also the militant atheists, I know I've talked with some of you guys who said, yeah, take your Bible pounding shit out of here, buddy. You guys are you're equally unaware. You don't get it. All right, everybody, there's something in there. Can you find it? See you in the next video.